It's the worst hunger crisis in the entire world currently and provides a setting for some of the most atrocious sexually based crimes imaginable. If anyone asked you to name a humanitarian crisis right now, you'd probably name Israel and Gaza, then you'd say Ukraine, and then you'd probably hesitate and just say, probably some country in Africa. And you'd be right. But this humanitarian crisis I'm about to tell you about is actually far worse than the first two you'd mention with Ukraine and the Middle East. From an overall death toll to the eventual possible overall death toll to the atrociousness of widespread violence and uncontrollable violence and sexually based violence happening during one of the most prolific political power struggles happening in the world today, leading to some of the worst suffering a human being can endure. And when we talk about human crises, we're talking about suffering. Welcome to Sudan, listed as a level 4 do not travel to by the United States State Department due to, and this is right from the State Department's website, unpredictable fighting during an active armed conflict, for crime, for terrorism, for lack of medical services, and landmines. You don't see landmines as part of travel advisories too often. The State Department even advises U.S. citizens traveling to Sudan to, quote, draft a will and adjust your insurance beneficiaries appropriately, implying that the likelihood of you dying while you go over there is highly likely. They even also advise you to come up with hostage questions with your family in case you are taken hostage while being in the country. The U.S. typically doesn't go this far with travel advisories. I mean, sure, they do have a lot of other travel for advisories, but not this far. This is all because of a full-fledged civil war has broken out between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces, the two most powerful military factions in the country right now. Now, to give you some context here, back in 2019, both of these factions actually worked together to overthrow the head of the state at the time, Omar al-Bashir, in a coup attempt. So both of these factions teamed up and they succeeded in conducting a coup. But there's also left a power vacuum in the country that proved the famous proverb being right, that the cat doesn't always know what to do once it catches the mouse. The two sides led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan of SAF and General Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo of RSF. After teaming up for the coup, fought for power and control between each other for the next 3.5 years until 2023 after being allies. The two men just could not bring their armies together into a more unified one military front for the country. By April of 2023, the two sides were in a full-fledged civil war, and if there's one rule in a civil war, that is there are no rules. And rule number 2 would be that the civilian population is the ones who suffer the most, which is and has been true in every single civil war that has ever existed in any country. Civil wars are the worst, most violent types of wars that exist. It's much more personal. The death toll is 100% your own people, typically. And many criminal elements start to see opportunity in the chaos. For example, the Civil War in the United States gave way for the Fort Pillow Massacre, which on April 12, 1864, Confederate troops under the command of General Nathan Bedford Forrest overran Fort Pillow, Tennessee. After the Union garrison, which included a large number of black soldiers, surrendered. Confederate forces continued to shoot, hack soldiers with swords and beat the surrendering soldiers to death. Eyewitness accounts and a subsequent federal investigation described a slaughter pen, where men begging for mercy were killed, with some even reportedly buried alive. I don't think I have to go into detail on the civil war that took place in Rwanda in '94, which turned into a full-fledged genocide, or just how bad the infighting was between North and South Vietnam for 20 years. A civil war is like the midwife for evil. And in Sudan right now, that type of evil is specializing in sexual violence. Both militaries have been accused of countless cases of sexually assaulting women while women try to travel through checkpoints, while fleeing conflicts, and also in exchange for food or water. Holding basic requirements for life hostage in exchange for sexual deviance. I don't think a human life can endure much worse than that. Survivors of these sexually based attacks are children as young as 1 year old, and are often victims of these crimes in a gang-style format involving more than one assailant. So you're talking about awful shit here. Some of the worst stuff that can possibly happen ever to people. People are targeted during these attacks, especially if there is suspicion of being affiliated with the opposing force. Particularly worse in the Darfur and South Kordofan regions. Now, what these attacks really end up doing is creating groups of people who end up absolutely despising the current sides and create their own faction to repeat the same atrocities on the very groups that had done those crimes onto them. Rinse, repeat. And you wonder why countries stay in the third world status for decades. Now, recently in the city of Al-Fashir, the RSF took full control, which was the SAF's last remaining city it controlled in the Darfur region, which resulted in the death of some 2,000 people being killed in the past 3 days alone. The RSF had been sieging the city for the last 18 months, having it completely surrounded and essentially starving out the nearly 1.2 million people inside by blocking all exits and entryway, preventing any food and supplies from entering the city. Imagine the military blocking the George Washington Bridge, the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, the Verrazano Bridge, and controlling all land north of Harlem and anything east of the East River. Manhattan would probably survive a few short months before brutally collapsing. For the city of Al-Fashir, that day finally came this past Sunday when it fell into the hands of the RSF, with soldiers reportedly executing people, torturing them, and shooting up hospitals, providing a conclusion that is impossible to have any answers to. Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab appeared to confirm these reports of mass killings by using satellite imagery and remote sensing data. Since the conflict began back in 2023, total death estimates on the conservative side report around 62,000 people. That's the conservative side. The majority of envoys in Sudan and by aid organizations having the number well over 150,000 people, which is much more likely. Considering this example, that in the capital of the country, in the state of Khartoum alone, a specific study was done last year that between April of 2023 and June of 2024, over 61,000 people died in 1 year in the capital alone. So the total numbers are probably way north of 150,000 people by now. Nearly 14 million people have been displaced as well, categorizing yet another immigration crisis with the title as the worst displacement crisis in the world. Which obviously I think everybody is becoming fatigued on. The constant debacle that immigration has become across the world, as it literally touches and affects every single industry and social institution of the countries that have been widely accepting people from crises like these. To make matters even worse, the amount of people migrating into neighboring third world countries that have a lesser GDP than Elon Musk's entire net worth is creating the world's largest hunger crisis that has ever existed in the entire world, with a whopping 24 million people facing famine right now as you listen to this. These immigrants flee to countries like Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, who are also experiencing their own declines due to civil conflicts, which these immigration acceptances are also contributing to. 24 million people starving. That's about the entire state of Florida, literally starving to death right now. This crisis is likely to only get worse, as the one word that is needed to be used to offer the first glimpse of hope in any crisis is stability. And there's not a single hint of that being a possibility anywhere in the near future on this right now. The only other country I could say that is experiencing something remotely similar to this right now on Earth would be in Haiti. Completely overran by gangs and violence, where resources are used as bargaining chips to obtain more political power by the local warlords. So just a really, really long way to come. If you take a look at Haiti and see what they've been through and see the resources in the local countries that have also tried to make a stamp of improvement on their quality of life, and it has widely failed. Now take that example, move it to Sudan, and then times it by 100, because there's just no way that if Haiti is in the position they're in with the resources they received in the last couple of years, there's really right now not a lot of hope for the situation in Sudan, which is just dire because it's just spreading. You're talking Sudan, if you look at a map, I mean, spreading as far as into Chad, which is like almost in the heart of Africa.